Welcome back everyone. Today we will see a game dubbed as Rubinstein's Immortal. Akiba Rubinstein was known for playing chess artistically. So much was his love for art that he played too many beautiful games but too less winning games. And hence, although a brilliant player, Rubinstein did not ever make it to become world champion. This game was played in 1905 in Poland. Rubinstein was black and he faced Georg Rotlewi. Let's see the game. The game started as d4, d5, nf3, e6, e3, c5, c4. So the game has become a kind of Tarrasch variation of Queen's Gambit declined, where there is a lot of tension in the center. The game continued as nc6, knight c3 from white, black played knight f6, and here white chose to play d into c5, easing off the tension in the center. This is not kind of a right continuation. It's better for white to maintain the tension. But anyways, the game continued as bishop into c5. White played a3. Idea is to start a big pawn storm on the queen side. Black played a6, white played b4, bishop goes to d6, white played bishop b2, black castled king side, white played queen d2. This d2 square is actually not the right square for the queen to be in. It's better to play queen c2. Black played queen e7. Now remember, queen e7 is a move that is going to lose black its pawn, or it might lose a pawn for black. But it's a well thought pawn sacrifice. For example, if white chooses to accept the pawn sacrifice by playing c into d5, the game will continue as e into d5, knight into d5, knight into d5, queen into d5, rook d8. Now the threat is to capture the pawn on b4 and win the queen. This leads to a quite attacking game for black, and which is quite a good compensation to the sacrificed pawn. Anyways, in the main game, white did not accept the pawn sacrifice and chose to play bishop d3. The game continued as d into c5, bishop into c5, b5, bishop came to d3, rook came to d8. Now this lines up the rook against the white queen. So the queen moves and moves to e2. This is the loss of tempo we talked about at the start. The d2 was the not the right square for white queen to be in. So queen e2 was played. Bishop comes to b7. Idea is to capture this long diagonal of b7 to f3. White castles king side. Knight comes to e5, threatening to capture the bishop over here. At the same time, it has also opened up its bishop's lines. So knight captures on e5, bishop comes to e5. Now the threat is bishop into h2 check, king into h2, queen d6 check, and winning the bishop over here. To stop the threat, white played f4. Now this is not the right move. The whole idea of playing f4 is that white is assuming that it will be able to launch a pawn storm on the white king side and will start having some counterplay against the black king. But the problem is with such moves, it's opening up lines for black's bishops. In fact, white is weakening up its own king side. Anyways, the game continued as bishop c7. White continued its plan of attacking the king side and played e4. Again, as I said, this was not the right way of playing because it's opening up all the lines for black's pieces to attack white's king. In fact, white could have chose to line up the pieces on the c file by bringing the rook to c1 and then c2, then bring this rook to c1, or maybe rook to d1, bring rook to d2, and then double up the rooks over here. This is a better idea rather than opening up the king side. Anyways, the game continued as rook c8. White continued its so-called attack by playing e5. Now this weakens white's king side to such an extent that it's now irreversible. You see, the attack is perfectly lined up on white's king side. Black will first play bishop b6, capturing this entire diagonal. This diagonal from b2 to b7 to g2 is already under black's control. This knight will move from f6 to g4. The queen will come from e7 to h4. And remember, this knight coming to g4 is not unprotected because this bishop is currently attacked by the rook over here, and this queen cannot really move. Okay, this is the basis of the entire attack from black, and see how Rubinstein makes this entire position as a tactical brilliance. Alright, so the first move Rubinstein plays is bishop b6 check, king goes to h1, now comes knight g4. Here a lot of variations are possible. Let's look into a few variations. The first variation can be capturing the knight itself with the queen. Let's see what happens if you play this. If you play queen into g4, here comes rook into d3. Okay, now the idea is that you can capture two minor pieces and with one of your rook, and once this is done, you have got two bishops against a rook kind of ending. To avoid this ending, you have to play rook c1, and here comes rook d2. The idea is that this pawn is under attack by b7 bishop, and you have got now rook d2, so you are going to lose the queen over here. Okay, so this is kind of forced. Knight comes to e4 to prevent black's bishop's influence on g2. Black can play rook into b2, and black has won a bishop over here. Okay, all right, this is one continuation to knight g4. The other continuation is what? The other continuation is bishop into h7 check, king into h7, queen into g4, but again the position will move to a similar kind of direction as we saw in the previous variation. This rook will come to d2, knight has to come to e4 because the threat is same, your bishop into g2 check, and it's mate unless you capture it with the queen and give up the queen. Okay, so knight comes to e4, rook into b2, and again white has lost a piece and the game. Okay, the another variation which is possible is maybe you can play h3. What happens if you play h3? Okay, if you play h3, black can simply play rook into d3. Okay, now if you play queen into d3, you will have queen h4, rook f3, knight f2 check, rook into f2, rook into c3, queen into c3, queen into f2, queen c8 check. Remember, there is a checkmate which is getting threatened over here. Okay, so this is kind of forced. Bishop into c8. You try to avoid this checkmate, but it just fails. Okay, all right, this is how the game can continue. At the end of the day, there will be checkmate. All right, so to knight g4, none of the variations are working. You cannot have queen into g4, you cannot have h3, you cannot have bishop into h7 check. All these continuations are losing. All right, so white played a continuation which was bishop e4. Okay, the game continued as queen h4, and to this white played g3. Okay, now the position has reached a critical point. Black has a brilliant move to play. Can you guess what that move is? Remember, it's a bit difficult to get, so take around 10 seconds. Okay, ready? Okay, the move is rook into c3. Now this is an elegant queen sacrifice by Akiba Rubinstein. In this position, white have a choice of not accepting this queen sacrifice, but still it would be losing for white. Let's see one of these variations. For example, over here, if white chooses to play bishop into b7, the game can continue as rook into g3, bishop c3. The idea is to bring the bishop to white's defense at the king side. Rook goes to h3, putting pressure upon this h2 pawn, which is very critical. Rook comes to a2 to protect this h2 pawn. Knight comes to f2. It's a check. The king has to move. It cannot be captured because it is protected by the bishop over here. And this knight serves to cut all the connection of queen and the rook to this h2 pawn. Alright, so the forced move is king g1. Now the pawn goes off, rook into h2, white plays rook into f2, it's queen g3 check now, king goes to f1, rook d1 check, here comes bishop e1, queen h3 check, king comes to g1, rook into f2, queen into d1, and it's queen h2 checkmate. So not accepting the sacrifice is not going to fetch anything to white. In the main game, white actually accepted the sacrifice, and it was a beautiful game anyways, and that's why it's known as Rubinstein's Immortal game. Okay, so white accepted the sacrifice and played g into h4, and now Rubinstein ensured that there is mate in 8 moves from now. Okay, all right, let's see how the mate happened. Okay, the first move in this continuation was rook d2. There is no other option for for white, so white played queen into d2. This removes the protection to the bishop over here, and now Rubinstein played bishop into e4 check. You see, this is already a blocked square. Okay, this pawn is already occupying the space, so king has no space to move out here. All right, so white had no other option but to play queen g2, rook comes to h3. Now idea is simple, rook into h2 checkmate. Okay, so what do you do now? You play bishop d4 so that this square becomes vacated for the white king, but it's of no use because this bishop is unprotected. So black plays bishop into d4. Now rook comes to f2. Whole idea is again the same. Can I have this square available for the white king? Again, that won't make any sense. You play so black played bishop into f2. This bishop cannot be captured. The only bishop which can be captured is e4. So that's what white had to play. White played queen into e4. And here comes rook into h2 checkmate. What a game this was. Hope you enjoyed this game as much as I did. Next week we will see another immortal game. Until then, goodbye.